we all hate you for that.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
But I think you also like me for what happens after the 2 minutes. This is my most favorite frame in the film.
Oh.
But the lensing makes it look like he's dangerously close. Why are you plucking flowers? He's like, God likes them. Yeah, of course God likes them, which is why he put it in the plants. No, why are you plucking it? Only kids, I think, can think like that, and that's such a beautiful way of interpreting God.
When you started writing Mithya, did you have the climax in mind?
The climax came first.
The Maathevan Show.
We are going to discuss your journey as a filmmaker, and of course, we are going to discuss your brilliant film Mithya. Mithya is all about childhood. So tell me about your childhood.
I usually get asked this question a lot, especially after in the interactions post the screening. Of is this very personal? Is this a personal story? And because they somehow assume that when you have done a film about a childhood and it's your first film, it's generally a very autobiographical kind of thing. So for me, my childhood has been the exact opposite. I've had a wonderful childhood per se. And Mithya, I had to fictionalize so much. Okay, so but of course, there's a lot of me in the film. The cycling bits with the friends, the going to the rivers, all the fun things that you do with the friend, all those are personal, and I think those are universal as well. The trauma bit of it, maybe I'll come to that a little later, of how the film germinated and took shape and kind of developed into a much wider, how do kids grieve kind of thing, and that question came from a very personal space also. So maybe I'll get to that some point later in the interview. But my childhood with respect to films, I think the only films that I would watch were on Doordarshan, and we generally have this, I think Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock, we would have these national award winning films, yeah. And Friday evening, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we would have films which would have ad breaks every 5 minutes and all that. So these were my access to films. Because from the place where I come from, Udupi, there's not much of a theatre culture there. People don't go to theatre much. They're more into performative arts like Yakshagana and things like that. So I've gone to a grand total of about 2-3 films till I was 20.
Oh.
Yeah. So that is the culture where I come from. Where films is not a big thing, and film stars are also not big thing. When they come, there's no major gathering. People don't rush to see their stars and all that. For me, films, yeah, of course, like I mentioned, Doordarshan, I very vividly remember watching these. I vividly remember watching Anand and crying. I remember watching Sadma and crying. So films did move me. So when I look back at films, it is moments like these, moments where I've cried or I've very deeply moved. And it is never this, house full, people cheering and all that. Celebratory experience has never been the case for me. When I think back of films that my early memories are also of being moved by films. So I took up to films only much later when I joined engineering, and kind of this entire hard disk, the entire hostel's LAN opened up, and you suddenly are watching a lot of European films and Scandinavian films, and you're like, oh, films can also be like this. Through all these earlier years, I never once felt like I can do films like this. Because films always meant larger than life, always meant grandeur and all that. Suddenly when I'm watching these European films or Iranian films, they felt like these films were about me or my neighborhood, and they were very simplistic films. And suddenly that entire thing of, if these are also films that can be made, maybe I can make films like these.
But that is how it started.
That is how it started, because when I was watching say a Mani Ratnam film, for example, you love it for the grandeur of it, you love it for the scale of it, but never once did I feel I can do it. Because it felt like it must have been a massive effort to put together 20 dancers, do it, to put together, so many guys have fight and all that, no? I enjoyed it, yes, but there's a certain detachment from it. So when I started watching European films and Iranian films, and when I started connecting, that felt very personal, and that felt very doable also. So this entire desire to maybe tell stories through films came in much later in my life. This is after my engineering or during my engineering and immediately post-engineering, I think.
Those simple films about simple people gave you confidence.
Confidence that, one of what the films did to me also, of films that would stay with me for 2 or 3 days. Okay, the inherent reaction to those films, one, this desire to make films. they gave me confidence that stories like these also can be told. Because in Indian context, they were not being told. Of course, there's this entire 1970s, 80s parallel cinema of India that were doing it, but they were never considered, they were always considered as a different kind of films, they were not
open to public.
Open to public, yeah. So when I started watching these films, and in that numbers, where I'll watch 1 film every day, 2 film every day and all that, suddenly I felt that there's so many stories that I want to say can be told actually. Otherwise, it never once crossed my mind that I want to make this into a story. I want to make this small incident that happened in my family or my neighborhood into a story, because who'd watch it? So suddenly when I watched these films, I felt, yeah, this is doable. And I think I can do this. All I need is a camera and this thing. I don't need too many people and all that. So that is where that bug bit me, I think.
What are some of the most important films?
Like say, the very distinct memory I have is of Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up, and a lot of Abbas Kiarostami's films. And because that is when internet was picking up and we started having access to internet, and you would look up at one film and then you'd go look up Abbas Kiarostami, and then you see he has done these films, and then you download it in torrent.
Wikipedia, filmography,
IMDb and all that. So started downloading those films and watching all those films. Kiarostami's Close Up, I remember I was blown away by the brilliance of it and like what film can do. Then there were films of the Dardian brothers. An admirer of all their films. Kind of gave me the belief that maybe I also can be a storyteller.
When you made your first film, Mithya,
yeah,
did you kind of try something that you watched and enjoyed?
No, not consciously. Definitely not consciously. Maybe I tried that in the shorter films, tried and failed and all that maybe. By the time I got to Mithya, I did my first short film. Of course, we are doing short films with my producer Rakshit Shetty, who is now a A-lister. Back then, we are in our IT jobs. But we're all weekend filmmakers, we had a handicap. Weekend filmmakers, yeah. We are getting our salaries and we had Saturday and Sunday off and we do films. At that phase, maybe we are trying things of something that we have seen, because you're just trying to recreate a certain moment in a film that you have liked. All your writing also was never personal. You're writing thing because you thought it was cool and things like that.
Correct.
So in that phase, maybe I might have tried. But after that, when I started doing short films with some scale, I was trying to find my own voice. And then I did a bunch of short films, which then were a part of a series called Acclaimed, which was all driven from my journey to figure out what is it that I want to say. There was one comedy film, there was one very experiential film and things like that. So it was all very different genres, but it was my journey of trying to figure out what is it that I want to say. Yes, I like Kiarostami. At the same time, I might like a Nolan film. At the same time, I might like a Aditya Chopra film. Where am I as a filmmaker? So that journey was this journey of making short films and trying to see where I belong. So somewhere there's one episode in Acclaimed called Void. Okay, so that kind of something struck a chord inside me, saying, this is something that I really want to pursue as a storytelling grammar.
Why?
No, I don't know. Something felt very close to me. Something felt very organic. Something felt like I am in control of how I was interacting with the camera, the DOP and the actors, and how I was able to orchestrate things within set and all that. Something told me that I was in complete control on set for the first time.
This with respect to the subject you dealt with?
Not necessarily, in terms of everything, in terms of the filmmaking grammar that we chose for that film. Like say each film in Acclaimed was a very different, like say this one film Void, the camera was never static. The camera I think was on tripod for only one scene. Rest camera was handled on shoulder moving. And there was other film with Rakshit Shetty where the camera did not move at all. It was completely on tripod. Okay, there was not even a pan, tilt, nothing. So we are experimenting. And it was like I mentioned, it was this process of trying to understand what works, what doesn't work, what works for me personally.
Good.
So while I was making Void, and this entire call that we took, that we have to follow the actor and follow his journey and all that. So I think that of following a character and kind of making this film about him. So that is how Mithya also happened to have the same grammar, where it is following a character and his journey alone. And every other character that comes in from the viewpoint of this one character. So that is how it happened. Because Mithya, he wrote it immediately after Acclaimed. There's a certain sense of you having found your voice, like I said with that episode. I somehow felt I was in control of this entire medium. Okay, so when I started Mithya also, I was very aware of what I was writing, how I was seeing it. There was a sense of clarity. Even when I was writing, right from the beginning, I knew the film is about Mithya. Okay, and the film has to show Mithya's journey. So entire writing bit, there's a lot of event that is happening around him, but everything you have to see it from Mithya. So that clarity came in from the writing phase itself. So I think that really helped shaping Mithya what it was, because Mithya was not discovered on set or on edit table. It was discovered in the writing table itself. I mean, the grammar for Mithya. Of course, Udit came in as a DOP and then the film evolved and got better, always there. But the final Mithya that you see there, a form of it was there in the first draft itself. Of course, the film evolved, the nuances evolved, but the base texture or the grammar of the film, I think, was there in the writing itself on the first draft, which was a result of me having found a sense of comfort in a certain filmmaking grammar during ACOM. I had this sudden urge to tell a story.
Why?
There's a distant family, a distant relative of ours who lived in Mumbai. A husband, wife and 2 kids. A calamity happened. The father died due to some illness. On the 13th day of the funeral, the wife, the mother, committed suicide. Okay, when the kids were out playing and the kids got back from school and I think he saw his mother hanging or something, and the funeral happened. And I had gone to that funeral. And I saw in the funeral, I saw this 11-year-old boy doing the final funeral rites and all that. But I saw the younger one just completely clueless. He's just playing around with other kids. He's laughing and all that. And that image haunted me. To see a kid at his mother's funeral having no idea of the gravity of the situation. He's just being a kid. Then that image haunted me and I suddenly started pursuing this question of how do kids grieve the loss of their parents through the lens of me being a parent. What if I'm not there tomorrow? When will my kids realize what I meant to them? When will at least my younger one realize what father meant to her and what his loss meant to her? So how would kids so young come to terms? So somewhere it felt very deeply personal, this entire journey of a boy grieving the parents' death. So I wanted to make that film. So that is how Mithya happened. Also Rakshit backing it up. Like say when I reached out to Rakshit saying I have this story, this idea, I sent him a paragraph or 2 of what the essence of Mithya was. He's like, go ahead, do it. Okay, and then so when you have somebody like that backing you up, where you're not once asking you saying who are you going to cast or what is the commercial viability of this, what is the budget you are looking at.
Did you have to narrate it to Rakshit to get his approval?
I sent him a synopsis and he said go ahead. Okay, and then I wrote the screenplay. I took 5 or 6 months. I wrote the screenplay, sent it to him. He read it, he called me, he said, yeah, this is brilliant. I mean, I choked in a lot of scenes and please go ahead and make this, don't change a thing. Okay. He did not even then ask me what the budget is. He did not ask me who we are going to cast. He did not ask me how we are going to recover this money. No. So that I think has spoilt me also as a filmmaker, where you are not you're not ready for the harsh realities of the industry otherwise, because you have somebody like this backing you up, and you think, oh, this is this smooth otherwise, whereas it is not. Rakshit makes it so smooth, or Rakshit makes it only about the film or only about cinema, whereas not everybody does that.
That's just Rakshit being Rakshit.
Rakshit being Rakshit, yeah. I had narrated Mithya to Rishabh to play the uncle's role. Oh. This was just, he had finished shooting Kantara. Even he, I don't think, had the idea of what Kantara would be.
Yeah.
Okay. So he had also shown interest and all that, and then Kantara trailer dropped and then it exploded. And then he had to back out because there's so many other things that are happening around Kantara, dubbing and all that. And so I narrated the entire film to Rishabh for the uncle's role.
Mithya as a film, it's a great film, but I'm still curious to know, how did you actually narrate this film, or what was the one line of the film?
The one line of the film is, for me, has always been the one line, the question that gave birth to the film, of how do kids grieve or how do kids mourn the death of their loved ones? How do they express?
But that seems to be the objective of the film, right?
That seems to be the objective, but that also is the lens that the film has throughout, if you watch it very closely, of how is he trying to express to his friend about what his father was like. So he's recollecting, he's making these connections with his father. So throughout he's somewhere trying to express. So for me, the viewpoint is still that. The objective also is that, but the lens of how I'm watching the film, no, for me, it is Mithya's journey of making peace with whatever has happened, and how do you get there? So my narration, while my narration also was largely from Mithya's point of view, it was not scene specific per se, where this happens and the uncle takes him to the school. No, it was more about this uncle trying to be this father figure and opening up, and him finding slightly a shoulder to lean on in his uncle first, and then his aunt and all that. So the narration also was from Mithya's point of view of how he's slowly opening up to his friend, to his uncle, and then to his aunt and all that.
So him getting emotionally comfortable.
Where are his emotional anchors?
Let's talk about the very first shot of Mithya. Why did you choose this to be your very first shot?
So for me, I think even from the first draft, the film started with his journey. We had to, one, establish a very physical journey. Okay, just show that this kid is being moved from Mumbai to Udupi. So that's a displacement, and you set it in the first scene itself. Second, this entire visual of, yes, you can show his displacement through a train and this journey and all that. But within that displacement, what is it that I can tell you about this boy in the first frame? To see this lone boy, little boy standing in front of the train, and just watch him from there. What are the thoughts that come into your mind? What is the first impression that you get of this little boy when he's standing there? So that is what we are going after. So suddenly, plus what made it a lot more impactful is the lensing of it. Finally, when we see it happen, it was written to be this boy sitting on the door alone, which is something you wouldn't let your boys go near young kids go near a train door. But to see this kid there for a good 1 minute before an adult comes. So something's going in your head and you are seeing him from the back. So there are questions running. So this is what we are going after. But suddenly when you actually see it in flesh and blood, to see it happen on set with the actor standing there with this little boy, and you see it in the monitor, and you are cutting out everything else and seeing just that bit, that I thought was magical, because there's a certain vulnerability, there's a certain fear, even with me.
Correct.
And I am instructing him to come back, because when I'm seeing it in the monitor, he's a good 3 feet inside. But the lensing makes it look like he's dangerously close to the edge of the door. I think that is the beauty of cinema as well. So whereas I am seeing him, I am seeing that he's in a safe space, but I'm seeing the monitor and I'm somehow scared. I'm like, Atish, be careful, come back. So I think it was that. It was this sense of wanting to give a sense of displacement and journey right from the first scene, and this almost bordering on danger and suicidal of sorts from the first frame. So I think that was the
give
intention.
Space for the audience to think.
Even before you are giving any information, you are giving audience a good 40-50 seconds to think of what is happening. So they are made to think of what could be. Why is this boy standing like this?
Correct.
You are almost at some point, where the train moves, you feel like this kid is going to fall off.
Yeah.
So that is a great initiation into the film. Like, what is going through this kid's mind? Why is he like this? Is he going to jump off the train? What must have happened? So you already have these questions, and then you realize he's coming into a new home and he's calling somebody uncle, aunt. Then you're like, okay, where are his parents? So I think this opening scene is a great entry into the mind of a little boy.
Nice. We get to see him and the train passes through tunnel.
Correct.
We witness darkness.
Correct.
When the train leaves the tunnel,
yeah,
again the light appears.
Correct.
I think this is the graph of the film.
Yeah. True.
One more important aspect of Mithya, nowhere in the film, you lost the innocence of that kid.
Yeah.
Even after facing so many struggles, the boy's life is broken.
Yeah.
But the boy's childhood and his want for fun is still intact.
Yeah.
Wherever you put him, he finds his own space. He creates his own joy. For example, him taking bath thing.
Yeah.
Like, kids do this.
Correct. I have done that. You have done this.
Yeah,
you
I
have
have done
that,
this.
I'm sure. Yeah. We have all done that.
Yeah.
When you don't want to take bath and
We
you're
fake
winding
it.
your time. Yeah.
We fake it. Nowhere in the film, we get to see Mithya being idle. He plays with his fingers. He plays with the rubber.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's a lot of Atish also. Okay. Atish is the guy who plays Mithya. There are a lot of times after the initial few days where he got what we wanted, no?
Ah.
There are a lot of times where he would also improvise, where I would not give him very clear directions. There would be initially, I would have to kind of alter his body language, kind of, don't be so stiff, do something to loosen up and do this and all that. But after 4 or 5 days, I think he just got it. And he would do things that would be very natural. Like say, there is a scene in the lighthouse.
Correct.
Okay, lighthouse where he's sitting with the back to the camera. Okay, and we are seeing him through a window. So basically what he has done is he has peeled a layer of paint from the lighthouse window. And he's doing this. And that is so beautiful actually when you see, because the uncle is asking about his father. Okay, and then he peels that paint and he's doing this, and then he does this, he throws it and then he walks away. So this is not something I had mentioned. I had only mentioned him to be sitting there. But he's doing this. And then there is there is a shelter home that he's put to. The uncle comes to visit him. And then he talks about, he tells something about his mother, actually talking about poisoning his father and all that. And there if you see, he's holding on to the grills and he's running his fingers there. It's so vulnerable to see somebody do that, I think. And that I had not instructed him to do that. But he did that. It was so beautiful for me to see it on monitor. Feeling it, there's a sense of vulnerability there. And that little action does so much.
Did you have to articulate your emotions that you want to convey in a different way?
Now, how do you tell a kid that every day, imagine your father is dead? Imagine, it's such a cruel thing to do, no?
Yeah.
And me being a father, I realized, what am I doing to this kid? So I was very afraid to talk the film to him. So what I ensured was, during those 1 month of pre-production, I told him you have to come to our office every day. Get comfortable with us. Okay, and share a bonding. And in those 1 month, I rarely gave him the script per se. But what I would do was, I would give him backstories of Mithya. Scenes that are not there in the film. I'd ask him to imagine what was Mithya's equation with his father. And then give him an exercise and he would come back. And then I would say no. Then I would give him exercises like, what do you think Mithya's friends were like? And they would come. So we would filter it down to a point where his version of Mithya would align to my version of Mithya. Okay? To a point where if I'd say, what do you think Mithya was thinking here? He would say something that like, bang on. This is what I think you would align. No? So I think this process really helped me on set, where he was completely aligned to what was Mithya's life before. What is Mithya's life now? He is living it. So that process really helped. I still remember second or third day, we were doing some complicated scene. Complicated in terms of emotions, not the shot taking wise. Where I had to feed to his head of this visual of him seeing his mother hanging by the fan. Now imagine seeing your mother hanging by the fan and blah, 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 blah. And I was worried and I came back, sat on the monitor and I was like telling myself, what am I doing to this kid? The shot happens and then I'm checking the monitor. I'm just seeing if the take was okay. And we wanted to go for one more. Okay, and I look around and then this kid is not there. He's taken the cycle, he's gone off.
Oh.
Okay, and then he's come back and he's like laughing and he's like, yeah, Sumanth, you want one more take? And I'm like, yeah. And then suddenly that was very comforting to see this is not affecting this kid at all. It was very mature to leave that after I say cut and move on to something else. Then he would be pranking with one of my ADs. He'd be playing on the phone. And that was very comforting. I said, this kid can take anything. So from then onwards, I would have very open conversations with him about his father beating the mother and all that. Nothing bothered me. I knew this kid was very mature.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Tell me about this. Conveying these emotions, especially from the kid's point of view, all that is fine. But converting them, most of them, into visuals. Mithya is full of that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you chose that path.
Yeah.
Instead of telling.
Correct.
Using sounds.
Yeah.
Using visuals. For example, him hating school.
Yeah.
Him hating exams.
Yeah.
You showed us him using a magnifying glass and burning his question paper.
Yeah. He hardly speaks a few lines in the film. So you can't expect him to tell anything. So you have to show it. You have to find a way to show his disinterest in going to school. You have to find a way to show his hatred towards his sister and not say it, because this boy will not say it. This choice of you following the kid, this has to be Mithya's point of view. he is exploring the house. You are seeing him from behind the door or through the gap of the door. You are seeing him from the interior. You are seeing him close. So all these choices, I think, came out from the fact of us deciding that this is Mithya's film. So this particular visual, no, because new people around him, new family, new home, and suddenly this new language that he has to learn and write exams in, no, this entire hatred. So how does he express it? So we had this magnifying lens before, and I remember burning question papers back then, not out of hatred per se, but out of the joy of finishing exams. The exams have gotten over and all that. So kind of wanted to bring in a little bit of my own childhood into this, and here it felt like it is his angst that is coming out, angst not just about school but about everything else here where he's burning. It is almost a statement that he's making. Of course, the eventual fire that catches on is something that is beyond his control, which is almost like what is happening in his life. It is almost like things that are not in his control. Things are just blowing out in proportions. Yeah,
that frame can actually make into a good meme template because they are having fun here.
Yeah.
Without even realizing what's happening.
What's happening in the background. That's more or less a depiction of what is happening in his life. Correct. Also.
And both the guys watching porn.
Yeah.
With a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
It was really surprising for me.
Yeah. Of course, that's something not from a very personal point of view, because phones and porn we did not have access to during our times. But when I thought of him having this one friend, with what do kids of this age do? Because they have very easy access to phone and all that.
Talking about perspective visuals, viewers looking at his daily life or his activities, his emotion, his anger through doors.
The audience wants to understand Mithya, but he's not giving you any room to get inside him. He's always cut off. You are either seeing him from the back, or you are seeing him from through the door where he's just either shut the door half ajar, he's covering himself with a pillow, he's sitting in a corner in the room and all that. So you want to understand him, but he's kind of closed out. This is what Mithya is feeling at this point in time. How do we make the audience feel the same? Mithya feels very suffocated in the house. How do you make them feel that? So there is no light, there's no open room, there is no big veranda, there is no space. He's almost locked inside a room.
Correct.
And you are seeing him from a hall through this small door, and he's sitting inside the room. Almost you feel like he's put in a cubicle, jail cubicle, no? So I think it was that call of every now and then during that particular point in the film, especially when he's in the home. Only when you see him smile is when he's with his friend, and that is always outdoors, where there is nothing that is binding him. Inside the home, there is no running away from the fact of family. There is no running away from the fact of what has happened to his parents and all that. So, and that is kind of almost like claustrophobic for him.
And that moment where he closes himself with the pillow, and in the same frame, we get to see his sister
Vandana,
having fun, laughing.
Yeah.
That's a great parallel.
I think that scene coming immediately after, like say you see him sleeping in the shelter home. Okay, and you see kids laughing and giggling, and that you can hear his mind voice where it's exaggerated. The kids are laughing, and when the kids are laughing, you also hear Vandana laughing somehow, and that is how the sound also transitions. Okay, and as a visual, you see him sleeping there, you see him sleeping here. In Mithya's life, there's no difference between the shelter home and this. This is also that. This is a temporary pit stop for him. Where he is not comfortable with here. If you are watching Mithya, I want you to exactly feel Mithya, because he is not saying anything.
There are two specific moments where the boy excelled as a performer. One,
this is my most favorite frame in the film. Just for the lighting of it. This one, I think we managed to do it at that magic hour, sunset and all that. No, this for me is the most favorite shot in the film.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm so glad you picked this one of everything. And his smile when he says English medium school, and that smile, no?
With some level of curiosity.
Yeah. And vulnerability, and there is thanks, and then there is there's so many things in that one little smile.
Superb expressions. And there is one more moment in the parlor when he gets to know that Vandana is not really interested to
come with him.
him.
Yeah.
It moved me so much.
Yeah.
His expression gradually changes.
Correct.
And have you
So here-
watched this film called Kannadi Pokal in Tamil?
No.
You should try watching it.
Uh-huh.
I watched that film in theatre. It deals with the same emotion. I've never seen a film dealing with this emotion
Right.
with such depth.
Yeah.
And
And it's a natural thing, no? The sibling rivalry thing. We have anybody who has had siblings know that. Like, say, for me, a lot of reference for Mithya and his sister Vandana were my own kids also. Like, say, my elder daughter is was such a sweet kid, harmless, very soft spoken, very nice, and all that. But the moment the younger one was born, I would just see her pinch her when I'm not looking, stamp on her fingers deliberately when she's sitting on my lap and her hand is down and she wants to sit on my lap too, but can't say it. So she would come just, press against her finger and then act as if it was. So I'm suddenly, where is this violent streak coming from in this kid who is otherwise such a nice kid?
yeah,
So I think it was this entire phase of trying to understand Mithya's journey, So moments like this, in the parlor where Vandana is saying, I don't want to go, I want to
felt
stay
really
here.
bad. I felt really bad.
I have been Mithya also right now, where the younger one, I say, she's sitting on my lap and I'm the elder one also, and she's sat on my lap for 30 minutes and the elder one wants to sit. And I'm like, please get down now, give her a chance, you've sat enough. And she doesn't budge. And at that moment, I'm also Mithya. Like, I feel for that one also, because she's also equally my daughter, no? And I'm also Mithya in a way. I've been through that moment also where Mithya is yearning for that bonding, that connection. My cousin's kids have their second child. Okay, so they took the elder one to the hospital to see the child. And the first thing he says is, coming to the hospital, saying, throw that child out of the window. I don't bring her home. Okay, and like, how can a kid say that? Such a mean thing.
Yeah.
I had a cousin who had a elder daughter, and then she was pregnant with the younger one. Okay, and one night she wakes up and she sees that this younger one, the elder daughter has a knife in her hand. She's like, I want to kill that baby. Like, so all these things, like, where is this coming from? Where is this obsessive thing when is coming in kids, So they're expressing it in their own ways. So I wanted to explore that emotion of, which is rarely explored, this violent streak in kids who are otherwise not violent. There's a harmless quality to that violence of hitting your sister, pinching your sister, inducing pain. There's a harmless quality to that violence, but it is violence nonetheless. So where is that violence coming from?
I think somewhere we are also responsible.
We 100% we are, because we don't give kids credit. I think kids are way more mature than we give them credit for. Kids are way more mature. We brush things aside, saying you are not mature enough to understand this. We don't talk about death to kids, saying you don't understand this. But I've realized kids sometimes ask such profound things, where you're not prepared. You don't have an answer for that. The kids ask things about life, death, and God, which is way beyond your understanding, and you don't have an answer, but you then dumb it down for them.
And just because we don't have any answer.
Exactly. You don't have the audacity to accept that you don't have an answer. You either say you don't understand things, or don't ask such stupid things, or then you give a very dumbed down version of your understanding of it. And in turn, you're dumbing them down.
Correct.
Like my nephew, I remember once asking my father, when father was plucking flowers for puja, he must have been 3.5, 4 years old. He's like, Ajja, why are you plucking flowers? He's like, God likes them. So I'm giving them for puja. Yeah, of course God likes them, which is why he put it in the plants. No, why are you plucking it? To please him. And I'm like, yeah, this is a almost eye-opener for me. Like, only kids, I think, can think like that. And that's such a beautiful way of interpreting God, to realize that this is how kids actually perceive life and perceive things around them, and then realize that we dumb it down for them and so much. And the fact that how insensitive we are when we talk about certain things. Subconsciously, they are picking things. No?
Correct.
Like, say, if I'm constantly yelling at, or if I'm expecting my wife to bring me coffee, bring me water, everything, I'm doing a lot of damage without actually saying anything. My son or my daughter might grow up thinking that is a norm.
Correct.
That it's their job to bring water to the table. Like, say, I think have a big role there.
We get to know what actually happened to Mithya's parents through this scene.
Yeah.
Or only in this scene.
Yeah.
Before that, we don't have any clue.
True.
Right? What gave you the confidence to take so much time to reveal this information to us?
I think I was to be very honest, I was very naive back then, and this being my first film, no, I went in with the conviction that, this is how I want it to be. I want the audience to live with Mithya for a certain amount of time without understanding what his problem is. Okay, and then I tell them what has happened, and then they start saying things in a very different light. So if I were to do it now with all the experience of and the struggle of having to sell Mithya to an audience, I think I would do it very differently. But I'm so glad I did it like this because I'm making audience a participant here. They're constantly asking themselves or watching it very closely and trying to understand what is it that is bothering this kid. You for sure know from frame one that something's bothering him, but you don't know what. The whole intention was to make the audience a participant in the entire journey of Mithya. And that would, if I give you information right up front, then that objective is failed. I've given you information and then you are seeing something unfold. Whereas I'm like, yeah, you also explore this journey of Mithya with him. Try and understand what is going through his life with Mithya. As Mithya is discovering things, you also discover. You're not given that information before Mithya. So I want you to go through that same emotion that Mithya is going through. When that happens, you understand where that rage is coming from. Though it is not justified, yes. So you have a certain sense of sympathy there. Because you have also understood that emotion or understood the complex situation with him.
Yeah. We feel for both of them.
You feel for both of them, yeah.
Correct.
So that I believe happens because you get to know information bits and pieces along only when Mithya is getting to know them.
And very good choice of staging in this scene. Placing him in the foreground.
Correct.
Just making him a listener.
Right.
Very good choice.
Yeah, and that is something also that we adults do a lot, that we are for us kids are very invisible. We talk when kids are around, we talk of such insensitive things
as if they don't exist.
As if they don't exist. So that was also something that I was going after here. Like, of course they know that the kid is sitting outside, but they're going on talking as if it doesn't matter and all that.
Tell me about using the fan sound and him not being comfortable with it. He has a trauma associated with ceiling fan.
Correct.
And the noise of it triggers it.
Yeah.
He switches it off and then he moves on, sleeps comfortably with the table fan.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting shift.
While I was writing this, and while I wrote that, his mother has committed suicide by hanging herself by the fan. So I know this much detail. So then I'm trying to look back at that moment when Mithya has looked at his mother hanging by the fan and all that, and then trying to understand, is he ever going to erase the ceiling fan from his life? He just cannot. Every time he looks at the ceiling fan, will he not think of his mother? Like, say, every time you pass through a road where you have met with an accident or your father or something, there's no way you're not going to go back to that moment. So every time he looks at the ceiling fan, so for me, ceiling fan became the epicenter of his trauma. So the fact that there's no running away from ceiling fan, there is no running away from the fact that his mother abandoned him in his version. And ceiling fan is a reminder of that, and that comes everywhere. So then that became a very interesting trope for me to kind of make it even more suffocating for him. So how do I kind of make him and sit him and go through that trauma again and again? And the fact, this choice of using sound as a tool, to get into his mind space. How can I do that? So suddenly fan became that possibility. And so the choice of sound also, it cannot be a silent fan. The fan has to have a sound and a character. So once you have established it here, it becomes a very important tool in the almost a pre-climax scene where the uncle and auntie are fighting and he's sitting in the room. And when they are fighting, what is more evident is the sound of the fan and not of the fight.
Argument.
The argument is in the background. The foreground, there is the fan sound. So it is almost taking him back to his parents' fights and all that.
Yeah,
so it's deja vu. When did you watch Mithya? I'm so surprised you remember so many details.
I watched long back and I took screenshots yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's when you relived the film, is it?
Yeah.
Because I'm surprised you remember so many little moments.
This dialogue, why did you want a boy child? Mithya asks. Maybe to show my dad that raising a son is not that difficult. Brilliant answer.
Yeah. So that one line tells you entire thing that you want to know about the uncle's upbringing. So you know that he was another Mithya of sorts.
Correct.
who was lacking the love.
Being a debut film
Hmm.
and dealing with really complex emotions, why did you choose or why did you opt for sync sound approach?
Sync, I think, right from my first short film, it has always been sync. I have a big thing against how we dub films. Dub feels like it's spoken in a room. The place loses the character. The environment loses the character in our films. They don't feel, it feels like the visual and sound doesn't marry as seamlessly. So I've had an issue with that. So whenever I've seen sync sound films, I feel like this sounds so good. Why is this? And then I realize it's sync sound films and all that. And then every short film that I've done, even if I don't have the budget for camera, it's okay. I'll shoot with the DSLR, but it has to be sync sound. I'll put money from my pocket because, see, you struggle so much as a director to get a performance from an actor.
Correct.
Okay, and performance is not just your visual performance, it's also the intonation, it's the sound, it's the silence. And you struggle to get him to that zone.
Again.
So, and you achieve it on set. But to expect you to do it again on dub, one, it's a daunting task for the director to get somebody to a certain zone. But it's also unfair to expect an actor to come to that same zone on a studio, where on set he's in the costume, he's that mahal is there, he has actors to feed off. But in a dubbing studio, no, you put a mic in front and say, yeah, now dub for this scene. That's also very unfair, I think. So it was that. Just there's the sounding of how dub films sound. No, again, there are examples of films that have done very good dub. I'll not discount that. But largely, the efficiency of sync sound and how much they are able to pierce through emotions. I think I've been a great advocate for sync
Nice.
sound in films.
The edit has actually helped the film
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. How did you find the rhythm of the film or pacing of the film?
Pacing, I think one, of course, I'll come to the edit part of it where Bhuvanesh has played a big part in it. But even while shooting, how you shoot also dictates the rhythm of the film. And because we have such longish takes and single takes in the film, it leaves Bhuvanesh with very little room for exploring rhythm. But in spite of that, he has managed to do that. I can give you examples of scenes. But to start with, the editor's scope is limited to set the rhythm of the film on the edit table. The rhythm of the film has already been dictated on shoot because with how you're shooting it and Atish's performance, and we are tweaking it, saying no, it needs to be a little quicker, it needs to be a little slower, and then you are shooting for a certain rhythm, and it's one take. So Bhuvan can't change that.
Correct.
But within that, Bhuvan, I think, cracked it in the first go. And of course, we tried different variations of it, but we fell back on whatever he had done first. Climax scene, which almost feels like a single take, but no, there is a cut in between. So there also, I think it's Bhuvanesh's magic of dictating rhythm. So a lot of these calls, I think, Bhuvanesh's sensibility and understanding of the film also really helps.
When you started writing Mithya, did you have the climax in mind?
The climax came first, actually. I mean, I had this premise of whatever I told you about the distant family, but I didn't know what after that. Yeah, okay, a child loses both his parents, 2 children. Okay, but what after that? Where is the resolution in the film? So this was 2020, and then we went on to do Ekam. Okay, so Ekam right now has 7 episodes. Ekam was supposed to have 8 episodes. Okay, and we go to Recce. We finish shooting 7 episodes. We go to Recce for the 8th episode. There is an underwater sequence. Okay, so none of the team there knew how to swim. I was the only guy who knew to swim. So I went in, okay, to see how deep it is and all that. And I held hand of one of the other guys who didn't know to swim. So I just let go of his hand just for fun because it was not deep. I had slouched, okay, and made it appear like it is very deep. It was not that deep. So I took his hand and then left it, and he panicked for a moment. Okay, and then suddenly everything fell into place. So the moment this happened, I had an ending and a beginning for the film. So then I started writing. So I started building, because I knew the end has to be the point where he wants to kill her or goes to kill the sister. So the film has to progress towards that. Okay, so that clarity, of having what the ending was, that gave me Mithya in a way.
What about the boy crying for the first time?
That night when I went back with this thought of, oh, him actually letting his sister drown. That night I slept with the thought of him letting her drown. Okay, and the next day morning I woke up saying, no, that cannot be. The film needs to have hope, and I also have a lot of hope in kids. Had Mithya been at least 5-6 years elder, he would have let her die. But in kids, I see a lot of hope. So I'm like, no, this has to be the healing then. It cannot be a disastrous ending to his, this is the death of his childhood. It cannot be that. This has to be the beginning of healing.
Correct.
This is not healing itself. This has to be the beginning of healing.
Correct.
And I thought, then I think we should see him cry for the first time. This acceptance of what life is and what life has thrown at him. So I think the beginning of healing process has to start from here, and that beginning can only happen once he starts crying.
Do you realize that we all hate you for that 2 minutes or something like that?
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah.
But I think you also like me for what happens after the 2 minutes.
Correct.
Only for the 2 minutes you hate me, no?
Correct.
What if I had let you? There are people who have told me that you should just have let him.
No.
You cut that. I'm like, yeah, I would not have pardoned myself if I had done that.
Yeah.
For anybody, you create a film, you lose the objectivity. Like say, I'm only seeing faults in Mithya till that point in time. I go to Mami in Mumbai. It's a fairly packed house, the first show, and I am watching Mithya with the actual sound on a big screen for the first time. For the first 20-30 minutes, I'm only seeing faults. I'm like, why is the rhythm off? I should have cut 2 frames earlier. I should have done this, that. And then somewhere something happened, I got into the film, and the last 20 minutes of the film, there's a strange energy in the theater. The energy changed somehow.
You were able to feel it.
I was feeling it. I literally feeling it with nothing said, nothing done, no reaction, nothing. I felt some energy, but I felt energy change. Okay, and then slowly I can see people twirling in their seats, heads twitching, and I can hear a ooh, ah, and that is when I realized, okay, the film works and the film has done, because I could sense that a good 5 minutes before that. That they are also anticipating it. They are sensing that this guy is going to do something wrong. So that build up towards the climax was happening in their head even before I actually showed it. So I think there I felt the film is actually working. So that was the first time I realized, yeah.
How did that moment help you as a filmmaker?
As a filmmaker is when I realized what a theater viewing experience is. To see a packed house and suddenly one guy laughs, and I thought there were some smile moments in Mithya, but no laugh out loud. But suddenly I see at least 8 or 10 moments in the film where the theater is laughing out loud. And then in the next screening, it's dead. Nobody's laughing. Okay? This is again Mumbai crowd. And I'm like, shit, people are not liking the film. But then that audience loved Mithya that much more. And then the third screening, people again laughed. And every viewing was a very different experience. So that is when I realized that this collective viewing experience, it's infectious. If there is laughter, it's infectious. People laugh more. Or people, I think, are empowered to laugh more because he's laughing, I can laugh. Or I don't know, it's deliberate, but you start finding it more funny. You start finding it more nervous. You start finding it more scary.
Together.
When you're together. And this entire trauma of the last 2-3 minutes, is that much more when you're watching it in the theater.
Yeah.
I felt that because I've seen that scene so many times before. Okay, but when I'm watching it in the theater, though I know what is happening, I have bloody written it, but with them I started feeling it. So I'm like, oh, this is what theater viewing can do to you as an audience. So my perspective as a filmmaker changed from there on, and I'm like, I have to write for this. I have to keep this in mind when I'm writing. Now I want to do it. I want to do it for an audience to come and watch it in the theater. I'm not saying moments for big screen or mass moments. I'm saying write it considering people will watch it in the theater in a big screen.
True.
Because that's a very different experience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for...
Wishing you more packed house experiences.
Thank you so much. If that happens, I'll be very happy.
Thank you so
but
much.
it's been a delight reliving the film with you. Thank you so much. Wonderful, like I said, this entire process of reliving the film, but also to have these conversations about these little things in the film which I've not had much. Where you have picked up little nuances. There's a line here or a prop there or things like that. You have picked it up. So it's been a delight to actually then open up the film and go through my own process. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to your next, because I want to know your visual cues. I want to know how you're going to use sounds in your next film.
Right. Yeah. Even I hope I get to know how there's a journey, but yeah, it's been a constant this thing to kind of try and push myself as a filmmaker and see how I can use sound and how I can use visual. So I surround myself with people who I think are a lot better than me. That's been my hack, because I've had this inferiority complex, this imposter syndrome throughout. So my hack to it was surrounding, even during my short film days, surround myself with filmmakers who have passed out of film school, because I thought they know much more than me. So right now it is that surround myself with great technicians, and through them I can learn. So
I just want to tell you one more thing. Honestly speaking, Mithya did not feel like a debut film.
yeah, that's very kind of you to say, but I'm glad if it came across like that.
Yeah.
But that also is because I've managed to find a team.
What did your producer tell about the film after watching it?
Rakshit, I remember he called me. I think I was out with the lunch with friends or something, and he said it is brilliant, and I had not answered the call. I had missed his call, and then he dropped me a text saying, "Beautiful, this is incredible work, so proud," and all that. And then I called him back, and then we had an hour-long discussion, and he's like, "Beautiful, the monsoon bits are lovely, and you've been able to achieve everything that you've written on paper and all that." So he really liked it, and I think the music moved him very much, because that night again he reached out to me saying, "Can you send me the music bits? I want to just hear it again," and all that. Him just owning up the film was a relief.
Superb. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maathevan.
Thank
It
you.
was lovely talking to you. Thank you.